Differentiation, the act of a teacher equipping students with the tool belt, tools, and confidence to confront a world that tells them that they can't. Welcome to our presentation, Divvying the Differentiation. I want to formally welcome you to TPT Forward 2020. I know that there's a lot of precarious things occurring in the world right now, but I am so glad that you've elected to join us today. This is going to be a digital experience, which means that you're going to get all you want of me in a digital setting this year. Who is your presenter? Well, let me go ahead and introduce myself. I'm referred to as the Bowtie Guy on Teachers Pay Teachers. My name is James Horton. I was an elementary age teacher for 10 years. The Bowtie Guy and wife joined Teachers Pay Teachers in 2013, so we've been at it a minute or two. I represented Toccoa Elementary School in Georgia as its Teacher of the Year from 2016 to 2017. The Bowtie Guy and wife, we have 1,712 products in our Teachers Pay Teachers store. Dana and I both work full-time on our business at home. We create content for teachers to better reach, teach, preach to their students. We hope to continue helping teachers enhance their own students' achievement. Now, we need to understand that the reality is that students differ in ways that significantly affect their learning. Creating for differentiation will help more students succeed. In this session, attendees will learn the intent, the research, and the misconceptions surrounding differentiated instruction in the classroom. I'll review various methods of employing differentiation, including how to differentiate through content, process, product, and learning environment based on the individual learner. So what exactly is this differentiated instruction? Holy ShamWow, we hear it all the time in education, but do we really understand what it is? Differentiated instruction is not just method teaching. It's an educational philosophy. It's a creed. A prerequisite for differentiated instruction is having an abundance of flexibility. I want to take a moment. If we were together in person right now, I am a big fan, big supporter of the research behind anticipation guides. Listen, it's KWL charts. Let's not over-sophisticate this. Just take a second, think about what you already know about differentiated instruction, then potentially what you want to know. Maybe you can email us at a later date, and then hopefully at the end of this presentation, you'll take a moment to reflect upon what you've learned. So, now I'm going to take a moment to discuss the differentiated instruction eureka moment, where it just checked me and wrecked me. Just my moment in the sun, where differentiation all of a sudden just popped into my brain, and I just had a dearth of just understanding and acceptance. And you know what? Part of my personality was ready to learn. So I was coachable when learning about differentiated instruction. Let's learn about my eureka moment now. That moment for me in this differentiated instruction journey is when I had this weird realization that students do not all listen. We know this, but there may be varying degrees of hearing. And what I'm saying is that the decibel, which is a unit to measure sound, different students react to different frequencies of sound. And so I investigated this and I was a reading teacher in third grade the last year that I taught. We had a short little social experiment, if you will, an investigation, where I was talking in my instruction about this silent sustained reading, but there were varying definitions, interpretations, representations of what silence really meant. Silence is the complete absence of sound. So when I purchased 24 sets of noise-canceling headphones, and I wanted to see for myself what's up. Like, if we truly had silent sustained reading, Lord, many of the distractions that carry out throughout a classroom, throughout the course of the day, throughout a student's day, it deviates them from what they're supposed to be doing. So I wondered, that was my eureka moment, what in the world would the influence be if I were to put myself in the shoes of each of my learners, each of my students, each of my scholars, to try to see their school day as they do. So what are the domains that we're going to be discussing today? Well, we're going to be learning about misconceptions. Now, this segment will consist of debunking many of the commonly held and incorrect misconceptions regarding differentiated instruction. We're going to talk about the student. This segment will consist of an explanation of the active participant roles and responsibilities of students within the classroom environment. We're going to discuss the curriculum. This segment will review the method of planning in the implementation of a successful differentiated program, resulting in collective student success. We're going to discuss the home. This segment will highlight the expectations of caregivers to cultivate student growth, learning, and cognitive enhancement over the course of time. We're going to discuss the school. This segment will identify and review the roles and responsibilities of the stakeholders of the school, including administrators, parents, and support staff. We're going to talk about the classroom. This segment will highlight differentiated classroom management techniques such as student behavior, discipline, and physical environment. We're going to talk about the teacher. In that segment, we're going to be discussing and reviewing the roles and responsibilities of the one who can implement differentiated instruction with the greatest degree of fidelity and affect. And we're going to discuss strategies. This segment will identify the research-based instructional techniques and implementation of a successful differentiated instruction program. What exactly is the relationship between teachers paid teachers, the bow tie guy and wife, and differentiation? Well, check out our Genesis story. How did we get started with Teachers Pay Teachers? TPT, as I know it, stands for Teachers Pay Teachers. You know what? I believe you can attribute this quote to Thomas Edison. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Do you believe that? I believe it because you know what? I became an even better teacher when I had a vested interest, when I had a stake and ownership in the things that I could create for my students. Now, I knew that I had the ability to create great things for my classroom, and I thought to myself, if I could create great things, great curriculum pieces, great assessment pieces, great high yield, research-based strategy, engaging activities for my students in my classroom, hey, I had the ability to do that for teachers in other classrooms, in other districts, in other counties, in other states, in other countries even. Today, I could proudly say that Teachers Pay Teachers has revolutionized my life in the fact that Bowtie Guy, which started in March of 2013, has just exploded into something that gave me a voice to the voiceless, if you will. It gave me my vitamins and minerals, man. It buffed me up like Popeye and spinach. Okay. When divvying the differentiation, who or what should be considered? Well, teachers can differentiate by content, process, product, or climate. Let's talk about content. Content is the information and ideas that students grapple with to reach their learning targets and their learning goals. Content can also include the standards that are brought on from the state that students are held accountable for. Content includes local curriculum expectations. In addition to resource varieties. What in the blue moon of Kentucky are we talking about with resource varieties? Well, I'm talking about reference materials, library books, the good old-fashioned internet, human resources such as volunteers, and audiobooks that makes information more readily accessible. And most important, you, the teacher. Now let's discuss process. The process of differentiation is reflected in how students make sense of the content that is presented. This effectively results in ownership. Activities and tasks are synonymous with the process of differentiation. Inventory students to determine how ownership of the content can be acquired. Some differentiation factors: prior knowledge and background, a student's beliefs, attitudes and dispositions, their motivational approach or orientation, in addition to their physical influences. Now it's time for a teacher tip from the Bowtie Guy. Differentiation is a reflection of a teacher's consideration of student diversity. What in the bloomin' of Kentucky am I talking about? Now, there is no student that is alike, that is completely identical to another. Now, a student's diversity can be based on cognitive abilities, their learning profile, socioeconomic factors, family factors, their readiness, how ready are they to approach the material, their learning pace, gender influences, cultural influences, racial influences, the student's value of learning, student confidence levels, and the student's behavior. Now let's talk about differentiation and the product. The product, how students show what they kudos. What in the world are we talking about with kudos? Kudos is how students show what they know, what they understand, and what they can do. Teachers can differentiate products based on their students' readiness, their student interest, and student learning preference needs. Now, let's discuss the student. There are distinct domains in which students have emotional needs. They need psychological safety. They need a sense of personal competence. They need a sense of positive self-image. They need to have a feeling of collectiveness or belonging within the group. Last but not least, they need to have purposeful behavior being exhibited, at least consistently. In a differentiated classroom, a student is well within their right to maintain a sense of expectations. First and foremost, students are members of a classroom community. Students have to remember that they need to be respectful of one another and their abilities. Students need to expect to make mistakes. Students understand that failure can be a great teacher. Students also have a voice in their learning, and they realize that they will be asking more questions than they will be just giving answers. Getting students to reach their academic potential may be just as easy as speaking their language. Now, what language am I talking about? Dr. Gary Chapman once wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages for Children. Sometimes there's a method in which we can reach and teach our children. There are 5 distinct love languages that Dr. Gary Chapman reviews in the book. They are physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, gift giving, and acts of service. Giving students a pre-assessment can help you get to a place where you can better reach them and teach them by speaking their love language. Imagine the ramifications if every student that you taught believed in their heart of hearts that they were intelligent. Knowing how students learn enables you to draw on their strengths. The theory of multiple intelligences includes 8 ways of learning. Although all students have a combination of intelligences, they usually excel in one or just a few areas. There's many different ways of being smart. In the verbal linguistic category, there's an ease in producing language. They love to read, write, and tell stories. They tend to think in words. The mathematical and logical intelligence, these are the students that can reason deductively or inductively. They love math, logic, problem solving, and patterns. Spatially intelligent students can create visual spatial representations and transfer them mentally or concretely. The naturalist intelligence, that is a student who is able to recognize flora and fauna and make distinctions in the natural world. Students who are musically intelligent show sensitivity to pitch, timbre, and the rhythms of sounds. Vitally kinesthetic intelligent students are students who use their body to solve problems, convey ideas, and emotions. Next, if a student is interpersonally intelligent, they work effectively with others. They tend to understand their motivations. Intrapersonal intelligence tends to be the students that understand their self. They recognize weaknesses and strengths, and they tend to use those weaknesses and strengths to reach their potential. So today, we took the opportunity to talk about multiple intelligences briefly, and we did a little inventory because you know what? We're all smart. Believe it or not, every person's smart. 8 different possibilities that we have according to this. You could be musically intelligent, smart. You can be picture smart, word smart, self smart. You can be smart about intrapersonal issues. People smart, interpersonal. You like to socialize. You can be body smart. That's usually our athletes, bodily kinesthetic, if you will. And math smart. That's logical, sequential. Those are people that think in terms of logic and numbers. And they love mysteries. And nature. People that have that existential intelligence. They love to think outside the box. Shoot, they love to be outside the box in nature. You know the old saying, it takes one to know one. Well, being a left-handed person in a right-handed person's world, I am totally in the know about putting myself in my left-handed students' shoes. We need to level the field for our lefties. For many left-handed children, the right-handed world presents frustrating challenges. Think about this. This is the kind of thing that we think about when we're differentiating and enhancing our instruction. Unlike teachers of generations past, we now know that we should never force the conversion to right-handedness, and that a lefty should be able to slant his or her paper at whatever angle makes writing most comfortable. You know, it's 10% of the general population that can be identified as being left-handed, and this group includes way more boys than girls. Because the left side of the body is predominantly right brain driven, our left-handed students often benefit most from differentiated instruction. Think about that. The right side of the brain thinks in more creative, spontaneous, out-of-the-box ways, so left-handed students are more likely to appreciate the learning and demonstrating of what they've learned through music, drama, and art. We also know that left-handed people are twice as likely to qualify for the Mensa Institute, the Mensa Association, the exclusive high IQ society. Today, many practical tools are available to make the classroom user-friendly for our left-handed learners. Non-smudge pencils and pens with quick-drying ink make handwriting easier. There was nothing more frustrating for me as a student to write a beautiful essay and have my beautiful paw print smudging all of that ink or the pencil lead all across my paper, because as I was writing, I was tracking right over what I was writing with my palm, or with the bottom of my palm. Unless scissors are universal. Provide scissors specifically designed for lefties. Yes, that's a consideration. Left-handed rulers that have inches marked off from right to left. Keep left fingers from covering the numbers. Left-handed notebooks bound on the right, as well as stenographer notebooks that allow smoother note-taking. Hey, these are all considerations for our students. Now, let's discuss the curriculum. The single most important way to make differentiated instruction successful is careful planning. Everything from the overall course that you're teaching to the unit plans to daily instruction involves careful planning to meet the needs of all students. Although the best plans allow for built-in flexibility, the fact is that no class instruction can be truly successful without conscientious, mindful, and dedicated forethought. Even though planning is the cornerstone of good teaching and necessary for differentiating instruction, many teachers simply do not know when they can find the time to plan effectively. Now, let's focus on the school. We're going to discuss school influences on student achievement. And you may be thinking to yourself, what in the blue moon of Kentucky does the physical school have to do with student achievement? Well, you know what? It's not about the building. It's about the people that live within that building most of their days. Listen, there are many influences on student achievement, but there are some super duper high yielding, research-based strategies that you could employ, that the school as an entity can employ to enhance, to engage, to push that needle. Now, not to push the needle, we're going to blow up that needle. Look, when you want students, do you want students tiptoeing past the finish line? Or you want them like blasting through it? Now, I'm going to hit you up with some strategies straight up from the godfather of research, educational research, educational guru of research, John Hattie. Let's check it before we wreck it. Let's start out with some things that, you know what, stink up the joint. Now, these are some employments, these are some facts that, you know what, no one can avoid. But suspension, that's not going to cut it in the 21st century. And I'm just going to tell you why, because the research proves it. Now, these file underneath the category other school factors, but suspension or expelling of students, that puts a child at a disadvantage of negative 20% compared to the control or the prototypical quote-unquote ha-ha funny average child. Now, so what else should we watch out for? Well, you know, people, they complain about the summer effect, the summer vacation effect, where students come in to the new school year groggy, and there's a summer slide because they haven't been practicing. They haven't been utilizing those things they learned in the previous grade level. They haven't been reading over the summer. But you know what? There's not much of a slide. And I'm just going to be honest with you. As just a general effect of a student returning to a brand new school year, suffering from the summer vacation slide, the summer vacation effect, that's only negative 2% of a disadvantage. It's not that much compared to suspension and expelling of students. Now, we need to be mindful that, you know what, there are some schools that have a culture that is one of greatness. Now, and I'm not going to kick it old school on you, but you know what, growth mindset's been around a long time. And I'm just going to be honest with you because it's a frame of mind. It's an attitude, not necessarily an aptitude. You know what one of the biggest research-based school influences, or any influence for that matter, on school achievement? Collective teacher efficacy. What am I talking about? You can't have bad teachers teaching, and they have to be weeded out. And I know that sounds crass and cruel, but that's a fact, Jack. Bad teachers lead to bad achievement. That's a fact. That's not even a point of contention. Collective teacher efficacy. I'm talking groupthink. If you have a collection of talent that has been cultivated, that has been raised up, the leadership within each and every teacher in the building has been cultivated, and it is in the process of cultivation, through the process of professional learning communities, through the process of professional learning outside of the school, outside of the district, sometimes even outside of the state, sometimes outside of the box, if you know what I'm saying. 157% is an advantage that students have within a school where there is an acceptable and one that's praiseworthy, a collective teacher efficacy. It's about time to make a home visit. Let's discuss the home. Believe it or not, there's a wide variety of differentiation factors straight from the home. They include the family structure, the home environment, and family resources. Let's go ahead and start with family structure. These elements have a defined impact on student achievement. Adopted or non-adopted care of the student. Engaged versus disengaged fathers. Intact two-parent families. And last but not least, other family structure. Next, differentiation factors in the home. We're going to focus on the home environment. These are elements that have been tried and true, researched, and proven to have an affect on the student during the course of the day. Now, these are considerations and factors that are outside of the teacher's control. The home environment, the use of corporal punishment in the home, early years interventions, home visiting, moving between schools, parental autonomy support, parental involvement at all for that matter, parental military involvement, and positive family-home dynamics. And last but not least, in regards to home environment, whether or not there is a television in the home has an affect on student achievement. The next domain of differentiation factors from the home, this focuses on family resources. Now, whether or not the family is on welfare or state aid has a direct influence on student achievement. Whether or not the family is of non-immigrant background has an affect on achievement. The employment of the parent and socioeconomic status of the family, that has a lot to do with the affect on student achievement that is outside of the control of the teacher. So these are considerations and factors that teachers, the administrator, the other school workers, the classified employees, if you will, anyone who works with the child, the student, they need to be cognizant of the student, of the factors that the home has contributed, so that they can better serve the student where they can control the factors within the climate and the environment of the school. Now, let's discuss the classroom. There's a fundamental truth in education that the physical environment of a classroom can negatively or positively affect the learning that happens in that classroom. You know, it's no secret that where we learn influences how well we learn. Learners, our scholars, our students, they thrive in an orderly environment. You know what? Think about the amount of light, or what kind of light your students are getting. Are they getting that light bulb light, or are they getting natural sunlight? There's a difference. Think about the brain. Think about the room temperature and the brain reacting to that room temperature. The brain functions best. It's been proven by research when the room temperature is between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Circulate that air. No one likes sitting in a room with stagnant air. Also, you should probably consider adding some fresh green plants, such as the spider plant or ficus, to keep the oxygen flowing in the classroom. Keep that air fresh. Consider motivational posters, pictures, or other visuals, non-linguistic representations that stimulate the brain. They're good for the brain. They're motivating to the brain. Because so much learning is at the subconscious level. Think about that. It makes sense to surround our learners, our scholars, our students with upbeat, positive peripherals. There are many attributes of high-quality learning environments. The first one you might see is active engagement with the students. The content that is being delivered is authentic and it's relevant. Someone observing a learning environment that is of high quality will witness and observe collaboration and a sense of fraternity and community. Observing a high-quality learning environment, one would see learner autonomy, students taking charge of their learning, taking ownership of it. Rigor is very important, and it is often seen in high-quality learning environments. Cognitive complexity. One would also observe generativity. Multiple perspectives are delivered. In a high-quality learning environment, there's a sense of pluralism. There is reflectivity and metacognitive awareness. In a high-quality learning environment, one would observe self-regulation and that sense of ownership. There is just a fragrance of transformation in a high-quality learning environment. Last but not least, someone that would come into a high-quality learning environment to observe the teaching, to observe the students, they would see productivity, busy in a beehive. Everyone has a purpose, everyone has a role, and no one is just sitting idle wasting time. The teacher that is of high quality and is maximizing that learning environment is also maximizing that instructional time as well. Now, let's discuss the teacher. I know this is not that big of a revelation, but your students that you teach, they may not learn like you. You know, sometimes you need a fresh reminder that instruction, it should be about the learner, not necessarily all about the teacher. We've got to recognize that the way that we learn the information that we're going to teach, it's not necessarily the way that our students will learn it. The challenge is to stretch beyond our own comfort zone in teaching style and providing choice and options for students who do not learn the same way that we do. You know what? We should bait our instructional hook with what the fish or the student likes, not necessarily what the fisherman or the teacher likes. You know what? Teachers should seek teaching and learning strategies that appeal to their students, not necessarily to themselves. Ultimately, the way that we teach must extend beyond our own preferences and beyond the way that we remember being taught. How can teachers enhance teacher-student relationships? As it is known as one of the most important aspects of effective teaching, it is essential to manufacture a system of trust and rapport. Here are some tips and strategies to enhance teacher-student relationships. It takes time, but you need to build that trust. Build trust over time. call students by their name. Empathize with the student. Don't be afraid to put yourself in their shoes. Complete the work that is expected from the students. Students could greatly benefit from seeing an exemplar of excellence, so why don't you model it for them? Refer back to a student's previous achievement or classroom contributions. Be enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is contagious. Take risks. Demonstrate to the students that it's okay to take risks. Communicate positive expectations. Greet your students at the classroom door, preferably by name. Hold informal conferences with the student. Make time for after-school activities that involve your students. Utilize humor. Don't be afraid to give high fives. Or if you can't handle the high five, go ahead and give a fist bump. Don't be afraid to delegate classroom responsibility to students like trash patrol, passing out papers, and sharpening pencils. Take the steps you need to understand a student's background, culture, or interests. One of the best things you can do is interview the experts regarding your students. That would be the parents. Teachers should probably be thinking a little less generalized. Utilize individual student learning objectives. Provide students with the opportunity to self-reflect. Communicate to the students the multiple intelligences, specifically how everyone is intelligent in at least one area. Model the 3 C's as the way to be. Be calm, be cool, be collected. Model the expectation for speaking and listening. Be sure to tell kids that they were missed when they were absent. Teachers need to perpetually affirm a student's ability to be great. Last but not least, always take the opportunity to shock your students with kindness. You know, this life is just abundantly full of some happy marriages, such as peanut butter and jelly, such as some hot fries and ketchup, some tea and, well, a lot of sugar. Well, in my classroom, a happy marriage that made my life harmonious, made my students' life harmonious, was the implementation, the utilization, the daily use of music in the classroom. Music is good for the mood. Music is good for the memory. Music is always a safe bet with our auditory learners and our students with strong musical intelligence. But music is a powerful classroom tool that you can use for all of our students, especially when used in carefully, methodically planned ways. Music is an effective energizer and mood maker in the brain. Have you ever considered playing some soothing Celtic music, some classical music, harp music, piano melodies in the background, as some ambience, as that background noise, that white noise, if you will, that doesn't distract our learners, but it may help them as they arrive each morning to subtly reduce their heart rate, to help them moderate their breathing, and to help them create a calm start to the day. Music is also an incredible memory maker and can be used to enrich cognition. Utilize your curriculum with music. We remember almost anything that is embedded through a song. A wealth of content and skill-rich songs that teach are available from all kinds of popular distributors and publishers. So check them out. You need to challenge your students to make up songs or create songs by putting facts to a tune of a well-known Mother Goose melody if they have to. You know what? If you put some muscle behind it, musical intelligence will blossom all over your classroom and you'll reap the academic achievement that music in the classroom has to offer. How do you know that you know that you know that you are delivering that instruction? Well, here's some key elements of effective instructional delivery. First and foremost, in your classroom, you're the doctor of differentiation. Every child, every day, any way. You are the vixen of variety. That means that you are willing to be flexible and you're willing to provide opportunities and choices to your students. You're willing and ready to employ cognitive rigor, to ratchet up that rigor, to utilize Bloom's or another research-based mechanism that can enhance a student's questioning, enhance a student's understanding of what they're learning. First and foremost, if a classroom that is just high functioning and it is a thriving learning environment, you're going to see engagement. You're going to see those kids plugged in and not off task or being distracted. In a classroom that is just popping, you're going to see the recognition of trends of student learning and adjustment. You're going to see a sense of self-appraisal, self-evaluation, where students know what they're capable of and they set goals for themselves. You're going to see questioning. It's almost like it's a Socratic system. Students are always questioning, and they're questioning everything. And it's almost like the learning environment is not of a black and white variety. It's one of many different shades of gray, because for every question, there's many more questions to be had. Lastly, a classroom that is popping, and that is a thriving learning environment, has an instructor, has a teacher, has a professor, if you will, that is making everything relevant, providing those real-life applications so that the students can draw real meaning from the instruction. Something that has gotten me sizzling and excited in the world of education is flipped learning. Flipped learning is an instructional strategy, and it's a type of blended learning that's focused on the amazement of student engagement with active learning, and it gives the teacher a better opportunity to deal with the mixed complexity levels, student difficulties, and differentiated learning preferences during in-class time. In flipped learning, what makes it so awesome is that technology is the foundation of it. Students get help on difficult topics. Parents are included in the instructional process. It creates an atmosphere of learning. Flipped learning provides opportunities for differentiated instruction. Makes it easy, really. Flipped learning maximizes that instructional time. It's so precious. Well, if a teacher's going to be absent, that's a great time to mechanize it. Flipped learning helps students stay in the know, in the classroom loop when they are absent. And flipped learning, lastly, enhances that student-teacher relationship that is so vital to student achievement. One cannot talk about differentiated instruction without bringing up Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a tiered ordering of cognitive skills that can, among countless other uses, help teachers teach and students learn. So Bloom's taxonomy has these tiers of cognitive functions and skills. At the basic level is remember. When you remember, you recall facts and basic concepts. This is the lowest order of thinking in Bloom's taxonomy. One who is doing the remembering, if you will, they have to define or to duplicate or to just simply list. Next, understand. This gives a student the opportunity to explain ideas or concepts, or to classify, describe, or discuss. Next is apply. This gives a student an opportunity to use information in new situations. They can execute or implement or to solve or use or demonstrate. Next, on Bloom's taxonomy, when you ratchet up the rigor, you're moving on to analyze. To analyze means to draw connections among ideas. You can differentiate, ding ding ding, organize, relate, compare and contrast, distinguish. There's many other verbs that can be employed, actions, performances that can be done when you analyze. Next up, we're getting high on the pyramid, high on the Bloom's taxonomy, on the ratchet wheel of rigor. You evaluate. When you evaluate, you justify a stand or decision. This is when you defend, you appraise, you argue, you judge, you critique. So you can tell that you're ratcheting up the rigor. There's a lot of higher order thinking skills that need to be employed with evaluation. And lastly, at the top of the pyramid, the highest order of thinking, create. This gives students the opportunity to produce new or original work. They can assemble, construct, conjecture. That means they have to think really far outside the box. And this is the highest order of thinking, but as you move up the pyramid, or as you move up the complexity level, the demands of students will increase. Now, when it comes to teacher influences on student achievement, there has been a bevy of research to support that teachers have a massive influence on students. Let's talk about some of the research and some of the effect sizes that come along with that. So, a teacher's estimates of student achievement has a massive effect size, the most out of any of these influences. Next, teacher credibility, micro-teaching, and the video review of lessons. Have you ever heard of flipped learning? Yeah, that's the next wave in education. Teacher clarity comes next. Teachers not labeling students. Look at the effect size on teacher-student relationships. Student rating of quality of teaching. That's a dangerous thing to ask for, is have students appraise, evaluate your teaching. Be careful what you ask for, because you might just get the truth. A teacher's expectations of a student's performance has a lot of influence, but also a lot of effect on that achievement. Professional development programs, average teacher effects, teacher personality attributes, teacher verbal ability, initial teacher training programs, teacher subject matter knowledge, teacher performance pay. As you see, not much of an effect. Research doesn't really support that. Now, to review, teachers have an enormous amount of influence over students. Be careful what you say, be careful what you do, because everything you say and do has some sort of influence, whether it be positive or negative. And now, let's discuss some of the strategies. There is a variety of differentiation factors when considering strategies to utilize with students. First, you should consider the student's prior knowledge and background. Next, you should take into consideration their beliefs, their attitudes, and dispositions towards education. You should then consider a motivational approach and orientation to the student, to reach them, to teach to them, and to preach to them. And lastly, consider physical influences that may affect their student learning. How should we serve our under-resourced learners? Well, this is some real talk coming from the revised edition of Under-Resourced Learners, 8 Strategies to Boost Student Achievement by the poverty expert herself, Ruby K. Powell. Number 1, we need to investigate, appraise, and assess the access to resources of individual students to determine what would be the best and most appropriate intervention. Strategy number 2, we need to prioritize the construction of relationships that are based on mutual respect with our students. We need to be cognizant of our unintentional and our intentional instruction of our language registry and story structure. We are instilling our students with social capital with our language use. We need to use academic vocabulary. We need to use enhanced vocabulary to enhance our students' understanding of the world around them. Strategy number 4, we need to teach the tools and strategies available to help students negotiate with this crazy world that is of abstract representation. Strategy number 5, we need to teach and model the behaviors and procedures that are to be expected of the students. Practice what you preach, baby. Strategy number 6, it is pertinent that every teacher track every student's learning meticulously so that you can reference it at a later date and you can track the progress of the students to show that they are making the academic growth that they need to be making. Strategy number 7, we need to build relationships that are based on mutual respect, kind of like the relationships that we are to be constructing with our students, with the parents of the students. Remember, they need to be built on mutual respect. Strategy number 8, we need to develop collaborations within the community to bring awareness, to specifically address the under-resourced situations that are just rampant throughout the communities that we live in. Now let's talk about some misconceptions, or mythology if you will, about differentiated instruction. Here are some things you may hear that may check and absolutely wreck you, because these things are absolute falsehoods, or misconceptions. It's mythology that's been created by teachers that will lead you astray. Some people say that it's just a passing fad. That's not true. That it's not worth the trouble. No. It's a new concept. I have a little secret. Great teachers have been doing this all along. That only struggling students need differentiation. And that's not true either. What about your gifted students? That every child needs a lesson plan. Come on, let's get real. Differentiation is a perfect science. No, not exactly, but it is very evolutionary. That it's costly. No, not necessarily. That it's optional? No, it needs to be utilized to best enhance student achievement. That you should only do it occasionally. Try that and see how it works in your classroom. Just add more work to the early finishers, because that will work, right? Wrong. That's a great way to cause a mutiny. That differentiation is one-size-fits-all instruction. No, not necessarily. And lastly, you may hear, incorrectly, that it's just too difficult. Well, let me tell you something. Even the worst of the worst teachers can still get the ball rolling and learn and utilize differentiation in their classroom to make a big affect on their learning environment, big affect on student achievement. Differentiated instruction has acquired a sense of mythology with some teachers. Some teachers incorrectly believe some of these mistruths. Differentiation is synonymous with individualization. Differentiated instruction will solve the problems of all teachers. High-stakes testing makes differentiated instruction impossible. Differentiation is just a method of grouping and tracking students. With everything teachers must do, they can't be expected to differentiate as well. Every child in their classroom must be doing something different from one another. In a differentiated classroom, the teacher does not have to teach. Differentiation focuses on primarily gifted students. Grading isn't fair in a differentiated classroom. And differentiated instruction takes more time than a teacher has to spend. All of these, fake news. This is the end of the presentation. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to ask us any questions or leave us feedback from the presentation. You can reach us at our email address, bowtieguy24@gmail.com. Feel free to hop on over to our Teachers Pay Teachers store. You can follow the Horton happenings at Bowtie and Wife on Instagram. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Bowtie and Wife. Search for Bowtie and Wife on YouTube, and you can find a large catalog of videos not only for kids, but also professional development videos for adults. Check out our blog at www.bowtieandwife.com. Feel free to check out the Bowtie Guy podcast. You can check it out in the Apple Store, Google, Spotify, or even SoundCloud, in addition to many other outlets.